So as I was watching the season, I was thinking quite a bit about my universal theory of all things SNL. I was getting very reflective as I was watching this, and it seems to me that there are really two SNLs. There is the SNL as it actually ran, and then there is the SNL that we remember. And it seems these days the only SNL that really matters is the SNL that we remember. And that's problematic because a lot of our memories are really kind of malleable and we forget a lot of things and we remember things that never happened and all that stuff. And I think uh, actually that's why we do this podcast. This is what we're trying to correct, kind of bridge the gap between what we remember and what actually happened. But what happens is people write about the show based on their memories, and then younger writers come along, and then they write about the show based on the memories that those other people have, and so it's almost like a Xerox of a Xerox, where it gets further and further away from what the show actually was. I'm sure there's like some Malcolm Gladwell book about that explains all that. But anyway, um, so what is it exactly that distorts our memories of SNL? And in watching the season, it came to me that I think it's all recurring characters. It all comes down to recurring characters, because we see them over and over and they're burned in our brain and they're the things that we remember. And I think what people do is they start to judge both cast members and seasons based on uh, the number of recurring characters that they actually have. So when you think of Eddie Murphy, you don't think of, kind of his one-off bits. You think of, Velvet Jones, or you think of Buckwheat, or any of these other characters. When you think of John Belushi, you think, Samurai and Cheeseburger, or Gilda Radner. It's Emily Latella, or Rosanna Dana. So it's recurring characters that really stick in people's minds. And I think that happens with seasons too, because you sent me a list of people who have rated the best seasons in all of SNL.
There's various lists out there by, people of various regard who, yes, will say, trying to do what we are doing, but I think we're doing a better job, of course. But yeah, ranking each season, which was the best, which was the worst.
Right. And so there's this young journalist who puts season 7 as one of the greatest seasons of all time. Because he goes through the list. He goes, well, it has Velvet Jones, it has Gumby, it has Mr. Robinson, and all these huge recurring characters. And of course, to people who haven't actually watched the show, that means quality, right? But no sane person would put, or no person that's actually watched the show would put season 7 before season 8, right? Season 8 is
Right.
actually a good season. Season 7 really struggles aside from the Eddie stuff. So
I've got season 7 in the ongoing rankings as the third worst season thus far. So just ahead of 9 and 6.
Right. So what happens is we remember the show's quality almost entirely through recurring characters, which brings us to season 10, which is completely steeped in recurring characters. I mean, you've got Fernando, you've got Ed Grimley, you've got Frankie and Willie, and on and on and on. And I think that is why this season is ranked so highly among the people that do their rankings, just because there are so many recurring characters, and it causes a lot of trouble during the show, as we'll find out later. But it's just because they repeated so many characters, and it sticks in people's minds, and that's what they remember. So I think it completely distorts our memory of season 10, which, as we were going to find out, isn't that great of a season. I've seen it ranked as high as like the number 4 season of all time because of who we're going to talk about, the new cast members and all that stuff. But I just think our memory of this season is entirely distorted because of recurring characters. And there are other reasons, people look back and kind of distort old seasons. It could be, they say, well, it really put an SNL back on the map after a slow period. Okay, fine. Or they say they just look back at the cast members and kind of what they did after SNL, and then they say, well, that had to have been a great cast because look at what they did afterwards. But I think for the most 90% of it, I think is, do I remember this character from the show? And so that's my unifying theory. When you see a list that's what the person who wrote the list is probably thinking about.